mental health month, awareness month winding down, I had this video planned since the first week of the month. Literally right here, my notebook. May 7th was the idea, but the execution wasn't there. And I would say the execution wasn't there because, truth being told, I wasn't even in a space where I feel like I could record a video. I'm a big advocate of how can I put a fire out in the midst of a fire? How can I speak on something when I myself am struggling to get through it? So for me to May 7th to speak on mental health, it was kind of hard for me to, even though looking back at it 2 days later, I was finally walking the stage. I was having times with my friends, and a lot of good things that you could say putting in your life. But this is where mental health is just such a important discussion that's not being discussed enough. It's almost let's see, the hoodie's messing me up. It's like we don't talk enough about it. Mental health affects, I would say, everybody in some way, shape, or form. And yes, it may affect others a lot more, but that doesn't mean that person is any less of a person at all. You know what I mean? I believe, through a lot of early studies that I've had, and a lot more studying that I'll probably, or a lot more studying that I will be doing, that I'll probably learn through, is that a lot of mental health things are, childhood causations and unresolved feelings just of going through your life. And I personally have been through some things where I've withheld that emotion of sadness, anger, whatever the case may be, and it's affected me mentally, which led into me, maybe affecting relationships or just my life in general. But truth being told, I just think that mental health, is just something that should be talked about, and it's not a negative thing that should be talked about. No, it should be a kind of positive thing to talk about because it's life. Nobody experiences life the same way. From me to you, or you to me, or the person you may be watching this video with, the person that just helped you make dinner, whatever the case may be. Nobody experiences life the same way. So mental health in that sense it can be helped, but I think the human connection is where we lack in helping mental health. I don't think we cherish human connection as much as we truly should, which results in us having disconnects in the mental health world, and the disconnects in how people feel about mental health. You look at a lot of cases, and I didn't find support because some people just truly do not care about another person enough to help them. But at the same time, if that was that person, they will want support. They will want that help in that scenario. I look at Michael Beasley, the philosopher now, as we call him. He's been through a lot, in his life, and now he's out here, voicing what he's been through. At some points where the media, like he said, when he came out there in black shorts, and the whole media world laughed at him because he came out there in black shorts, but he was going through one of the roughest times of his life. Nobody knew that, but now that we see it, and it's like, maybe we should care for it, but that's just a showcasing of, you never know what people are going through whenever you speak with them. You know what I mean? He's out here bad. He ran into and came back, and you might think, he just forgot his shorts. But now that we know, years later, I believe, he was going through one of the toughest times of his life, and it's just like people just sat there and laughed at him. Excuse me. So in this mental health, I'm kind of going to dive into how my mental health got affected over these past, we'll say, 8 month span, maybe almost, maybe 10. And, how I feel like mental health and following in the idea of God helps. My disconnects with God, my disconnects with my mental health, and, I have a lot of sections and things like that because luckily I've documented a good amount of it. Initially I was going to document the entire journey, but some days I just couldn't face myself to look at a camera. I couldn't face to see the person that I was on the other side of that video because that's just not the person that I knew. So I look at this. My first quote. I was set on me being great. At the end of this year, I'm gonna look back on this clip right here with this song, and I'm gonna be in a whole different space. Twitch might be booming. Let's just speak in a sense everything worked out. Twitch booming, podcast Unpacked with Zay is booming, the Heisman TV booming. God is guiding us into things that He has aligned for us, and we just aligning ourselves with His will. So when I listen to this song again, come January 1st, 2026, I'm gonna do this. As the video showed, it was, I put God in my plans, but it was really just a focus on, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, and God is gonna allow it. You know what I mean? And at that point in my life, I would say I wasn't even really working hard for the things that I said I was gonna get. I might have just been getting into it, but even then, I was not applying myself as much as I should have. And mentally, it was, I'm going to achieve these things. I know I am. And God's just going to, it's kind of putting God in like the sidecar of your motorcycle. Like, they're just there, but that was totally wrong of me. You know what I mean? And weeks after that video was entered or put out, whatever you want to call it, my entire life changed. I have my journal entries here for, more accurate representation. Like this journal right here is crazily let's see where we are. Everything, all these pages you see right here were prior to my injury. So the entire journal was when my life changed. I didn't think of, would ever happen to me. I had one kind of major knee injury 2 years ago that sat me down for a few months, and little did I know that was kind of it was a foreshadow. There it is. It was foreshadowing what I would go through 2 years. I never thought I would tear my ACL in 1,000 lifetimes. Especially with, my track record of injuries and, the things that I did during the summer to prevent said injury. But on September 13th, I tore it. For 2 weeks, I didn't even know that's what the case was, or announced to me. I didn't know, but, my team around me knew. So here on September 27th, I went and got it. And some of the main points that I'm reading out of here is, this just shows how much protection the Lord had over me. For one, as I mentioned, I didn't face a lot of injuries, so my mental health regarding injuries was very, I was getting through it. If I had an injury, I was either playing through it or it was a few days rest, aside from the 2 years, or 2 years ago moment. I just call that my sophomore year moment, but I was out of the season, so I wasn't missing anything. Now we're talking about the senior season, the year that you look forward to when you get into college, pretty much. Deepen my faith as I embark on this new journey, unbeknownst to what was ahead. This was alone the day that I found out that I tore my ACL. And then we, my team, we go on to win a game that we haven't won in a few years, in the first game of conference. So everything is all is well. It's like okay, and the team sense will be okay. Mentally, I'm gone. Mentally, I'm fighting, but seeing the people around me succeeding and seeing them, being able to maintain and seeing the team, it was like, okay, I can figure this out, you know what I mean, and not have to, dang, the team would be better with me. The team is good. If not, you might just say at that time, better without you, right? But that's how I felt. So as time goes on, we don't really see things going on. But when I wrote that message on September 26th, when I found out I tore my ACL, that's when I feel like everything just started crumbling around me. As I mentioned that, yes, my team was playing good. We were winning games. Well, now the 26th, what was it, the 28th we played again? 29th maybe, we lost. We lost the game in a game that, I was looking forward to, but we lost that game. And at that moment, it felt like the entire world began shutting down. It was like my brain finally clocked that, yo, you tore your ACL. You feel me? It's like the voice in my head. You need to acknowledge this. But me being me and like you feel me? I was a big hold everything in and it'll go away. But that's never the case. You hold things in, they just bundle up in you, you feel me, until it's time to, you feel me, release those emotions when you're least expected and you can't even control those emotions. So by the end of September, I would say mentally I was gone. Mentally, every day waking up was just a battle. Waking up just to my grades were the worst they've ever been. I didn't want to go to the practices with my team. Like, I know I'm just gonna stand there, but I didn't even want to show up and be there for the guys. I didn't want to show up for myself. I was in the worst spot of my life. Nothing was going well. And as time went on, it was every day I woke up, something else went wrong. And I wrote it down. I felt I was abandoned. Psalm 42, my rock, my God, why have you forsaken me? Like, I wrote that down in this notebook. And I was in the book of Job as well. And I'm just, I'm not understanding why everything is being taken. Now my season's over. I can't pass my classes. This is my last semester, and I'm borderline failing my classes. Nothing is going right. My bank account is not looking good yet. Nothing is going right. And I remember I was leaving Spanish, walking through campus on the phone with my dad, talking about things, and I just started crying, walking through campus, voicing to my dad, I'm just not okay. I remember, what did I called? I was like, it's like I built everything up. I wish I had the other note. I built everything up, it's just everything is crumbling down. I built this pillar, I built this building that I worked so hard to begin to build to this point that took me the past 2.5 years to get to this point where I'm happy and I believe I'm at a good point. And you knock out soccer, as I said, and everything else fell down. It just didn't even make sense because I didn't even have that much attachment to the soccer. Soccer-wise, I was strictly having fun. The most fun in my life, I would say. The most fun I had playing soccer. It was no, I gotta go run. I was enjoying the football, as they say. But as soon as this gets taken away, my whole life crumbles down, and I just didn't understand that when talking to my dad. But as Rodway said, talking to your dad, he just had to talk with his dad, and it healed him. And that it did. So as I began to go through the journey of now process of getting a new ACL and things like that, I diminished the idea of getting surgery. Surgery to me was just never gonna happen. At the time, that was, you feel me, it was a safe bet. I was I was still able to run around. I could probably lift. Life didn't change in that sense. It was just no football, right? But that's when I went home and saw a doctor for the first time. November 24th. So you see that 2 months now, just ACL. There's a lot of journals and a lot of hard times, a lot of tears were shed, and a lot of just battling. But, we got to November 24th, and I remember booking the day for, I think it was 2 weeks, maybe even a week and a half. So I'm going back up to school, hanging out with my friends for one more weekend, and that Tuesday I'm coming home and getting surgery. So it all happened just so fast. And I wrote this down that day, just sitting in the gym, expressionless and motionless, and I'm just in between sets writing it down. And I wrote, I truly don't know how to feel. I just don't want God to think. And I put no in parentheses. I'm being double-minded. I just hope he knows my heart. Right? I'm in the gym fighting tears over the situation. Right? And I had a little poem about trees losing their leaves. I could dive in that another time. But as I mentioned, I didn't know what to do. The double-minded thing, I just felt I'm remaining faithful. I'm remaining diligent, and honestly, was I being double-minded? Looking back at it, yes. because once I learned about the being double-minded, when it hit my eyes, when I read the Bible one day, read the Bible, read my verse, and it was do not be double-minded. It was, wow, I've been double-minded this entire time. Now let me just tell him I'm not going to be double-minded as I continue to do that. Right? So mentally, I'm trying to battle. I'm trying to handle everything myself. It's all God, you're here. But I got it. Like, just stay here and, pound me when I need you. Right? But I was wrong. I had it all wrong. I feel like he's abandoned me and he's forsaken me, but I'm the one that's moving him back or not inviting him all the way in. But then that's where I opened that door. I opened the door a little bit more. I wouldn't say a lot more, but I opened the door a little bit more. And then one day it hit me like, this is now an opportunity for you to grow. I had that idea when it hit me in September, but it wasn't really in full effect till I understand that this is now happening. Is that this is a new opportunity to grow, a new chance at a new identity. And in that time, for 21 years of my life, I've been an athlete. All I knew was sports. If I did anything, it would have been sports related. And my two main interests, sports and video games. I didn't have any other interests. I didn't have any other ideas of what I wanted to do. And I would say this is one reason that God came in and I would say wrecked my plans. Showed me that my plans are not as good as his. I don't even know what is on the other side. We're just still in the ACL moment. In the toughest time of my life, but I come back up to school. We'll go through this real. My note that I wrote on me having surgery. I know that there are habits and ideas that are meant to be left with me going down this new path. But some of those habits I didn't even break until May. I wrote this in December, so 5 months later, I'm still doing the habits that I know I should not be doing. I wrote how faith may drop in trying times even slightly. I even acknowledge the fact that my faith wavers, that I remain double-minded. And it's crazy to read that again and go back and see how your mind works and the things that you were so worried about a few months ago. And some places you beat those, and some places you're still holding on to these things. Going into, and I'm finally able to walk. I come back up. I'm kind of, the ACL journey is going, but it's not really going. And I went through another tough time. And this time it was just strictly financials. I would say ACL began to kind of work out and began to make some good progress, but it was just like, dang, and I have no money. I lost all my money. There were unseen things. There was poor spending. It was all, it was a lot of it was on me. But I wasn't doing what I was supposed to in other areas. I was like, I should be running, not even realizing, to be running 5 months out of your ACL is a miracle. You know what I'm saying? And I still feel like there are some things that, a little nervousness in my head that is like, are you sure you're supposed to be running? But that's what I expect. I would say mentally I'm not strong, as strong as I would like to be. I would say I'm mentally strong. But, I have my own moments where, mentally some things come in and it's, that voice, is talking, and it's just, that voice isn't the voice you should be hearing. That's not my voice, and that's the voice of God. That's the voice of others, people we should not be listening to. So in this time and in this other situation, I'm just feeling like life is just beating me down. As a now college graduate, it's just I really didn't know what to do. But in this time, I pulled the sections out the journal I have currently. I kind of just looked past that. I figured out how to just continue to live. I figured out how to continue to have fun, with my friends for these last few months. And all while things may seem to be crumbling around me or I need to be focusing elsewhere, I'm having a good time. I'm waking up and just grateful for another day. And that's just me realizing that I can't do this without God. Truthfully, I couldn't. I can't. I couldn't even imagine going the rest of my life without him. After seeing, that how hard things get, and let alone not even having God with you. And as days like that opened my eyes to, was I even doing things the right way? In my verse for today, like I was looking at the worldly focus on things. The version that arrives is more important than the time it takes to get there. I look at a lot of things that I said that I wanted and knew that I wanted to get, but if that person got there and got them, one, would I have even managed it? Would I have even been grateful for it? And how would I have blew it? I don't like that person. I don't. He arrived at the time that he wanted him to go. He would have blew it, and Lord knows where we would be. But that's why I now see that the person that arrives at the moment that you want to get to, or the moment that has God prepared for you, is more important than the time you believe that it would go. Just because you want to get there fast, you get there, you get to the thing that you want to get to tomorrow. Do you think you would be better tomorrow or in 2 weeks when you're working on the things that you need to work on to now maintain and excel from the things that you just received? Are you prepared to receive the things that you want as the person that you want them? That's a question for you, but I know for me that I just didn't have that. I was not ready. Mentally, I was not ready. Physically, I was not ready. Spiritually, I was not ready. I was not ready in any area in my eyes. Looking back, I was so focused on the worldly things. How people gonna love if they see me with this? I'm gonna love this because of this. When realistically, those things brought me nothing. They didn't even, I would say, honestly, bring me happiness in a time like that, because even some of those things that I chose or that I wanted a few months down the line, I adjusted it to something that I love a lot more today, something that I cherish a lot more today. But that person back in August, when he spoke on a lot of things that he wanted or wrote down the goals that he had, would not have managed. He would have blew it at some point, right? So now we're at the we over me mentality. You see this a lot in the sports world, but the we over me mentality with God, like me and God is better than anything that I could want, that I could do. I can believe that I could do a lot of these things, but I would truthfully say a lot of these things that I've done or been blessed to go through or been blessed to do. I look at my ACL, like I just put on my soccer cleats for the first time yesterday. After September 13th or December 9th, I didn't even know the next time I will put on soccer cleats. Now the question is, are you going to play again? As much as I would want to, literally it's in God's hands. If God believes I'm deemed to go play again, hey, so be it. He shall be my shepherd, and I shall not want. He shall lead me to green pastures, right? But I believe that also that this journey has strengthened my mental health a lot, has strengthened my relationship with God a lot. I believe that they work hand in hand, quite honestly. I believe that God is consciousness. God is, you have to seek internally to find God, and mental health is your ability to meet God where he is. For God to meet you where you are, you have to be able to understand your own self. I've been through the spiritual warfare of things. I actively, a few days ago, just went through an entire war in a night, and I just was, I remember I was fighting it at first, for the first few minutes, like, oh, I got this, and I just started losing. But then once I called on God for his support, like, I begged, like, just please help me. I began winning that battle. And then another battle popped up the next day, and it was I know what I need to do. Maybe this is a test to see, do I believe I could do this again? But immediately when that next battle began, it was, God, let's do this again. So I look at that as also, let me close my book now, that if you're going through bad things, like bad times are going to happen in life. You can never predict what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen in a few hours. You truthfully can't, but your best bet is to respond. Your response is the most important thing in anything. So when tough times arise, mentally you have to be strong, and you have to know that, God is here for you. Take it, I would be an advocate for you. I know you could get through the times, the hard times, the times that nobody see, the moments in your room that only you know about. The sentences, the paragraphs, the letters you wrote to yourself in your own notebook of how things are so hard and you just don't know how you're going to get through them. I know somebody to help you. Invite God in. And not only invite God in, but you can't give up on yourself and invite God in. God made you. These things that you're going through, He knows. And you're going to be able to get through it. You're going to be strong enough to get through anything you get through. But mentally, you have to believe you'll get through it. Because if mentally you give up on yourself, the physical attributes of what you have to do will not follow. If you're just, I'm not going to be able to, we'll use the gym, I'm not going to be able to lift this weight. Guess what? You're not going to be able to lift this weight. Oh, I'm not qualified for this job. Well, guess you're not qualified. You're gonna act unqualified. But if you walk in with your head up, chest high, knowing, it's every situation is now a 2v1, or you have somebody with you, the most powerful being in the entire everything we know. You can get through anything. I know this was very long-winded and maybe stretched out in a lot of areas, but I believe the mental health game and God and everything is just so effective. Like, I see how the game affected my life with mental health and God. I didn't believe, in September that this could even happen to me. It wasn't a thought that this would ever happen to me in August. I had games circled on my calendar. I had story posts create or ready to go for certain games and when I do these certain things, but it was me saying, I'm gonna go do all these things, and God, you could basically be along for the ride. It was kind of putting God in the audience. Like, you could be there, you could be of support, but truthfully, I got this. Like, I'm gonna go do these things, and hey, you could be there. When you got the crowd, players, we love the crowd, but, they don't really affect the game. So that's how I kind of put God. But now I've grown a lot, and I would say my faith is ever growing. There are a lot more questions of my faith, but all in all, like, I know one thing will not be changed. Is just my sheer belief in the Lord and God. Because truthfully, when I was trying to do everything myself, I failed. So if you're struggling mentally, you're struggling spiritually, just know you can do this. God got you. And don't let anybody tell you that your mental health does not matter, because it does.